The disappointment of 1914 coming and going without Armageddon's arrival, and Russell's death in 1916, left the Watchtower and the International Bible Students Association ideologically adrift. They had lost their wise and faithful servant and doctrinal mastermind. But where some saw embarrassment and false prophecy, Joseph Rutherford saw opportunity, because Joseph Rutherford had biblical conspiracies of his own to sell, and the Watchtower's existing machinery was already there to distribute it.
So then we come to the harvest time. In particular, we're talking about 1919, and the faithful anointed slaves on earth have been doing business during these last days.
Following Russell's death, there was a brief power struggle related to control of the Watchtower's board of directors. Joseph Rutherford won out, handing him the reins of the mass media empire that Russell had established, along with the hearts and minds of tens of thousands of international Bible students. Under Rutherford's leadership, loyalty to the Watchtower Corporation, and therefore loyalty to Rutherford himself, was elevated well beyond where it had been under Russell. Watchtower publications took on an even more intense anti-religion, anti-government, paranoid hardliner quality. It was Rutherford who declared that the highest service that a Christian could offer was to advertise the king and his kingdom. It was Rutherford who prohibited beards for Jehovah's Witnesses because Russell wore a beard. It was Rutherford who claimed in 1919 that millions now living would never die, and that the end had been rescheduled for 1925. It was Rutherford who predicted that Abraham, Moses, David, and Isaiah would be physically resurrected just before Armageddon, and that they would be the leaders of God's incoming world government. Rutherford then built a 10-room mansion in San Diego to house them, which he used as a vacation home in the meantime. It was Rutherford who revised all of Russell's chronology so that the start of the last days, the end of the Gentile times, and Jesus' invisible return to rule as king all allegedly happened in 1914. Rutherford's doctrinal shifts and more frenzied tone led many members of the International Bible Students Association to leave during the 1920s and form groups like the Stand Fast Movement, the Pastoral Bible Institute, the Layman's Home Missionary Movement, and the Dawn Bible Students Association. In 1925, there were 90,494 memorial attendees, but by 1928 there were only 17,380, a decline of 80%.
Granted, the fact is that some professed anointed did prove to be wicked and sluggish and refused to do business. Well, that's a fact, just like some other sheep refused to be faithful and loyal to Christ's brothers.
The Watchtower was bleeding followers, so in a rebranding effort to create more distance between his doctrine and Christianity at large, Rutherford began to put more and more emphasis on the English mistranslation of one of ancient Israel's names for God, the Tetragrammaton, which is normally rendered YHWH or Yahweh. But an American religion demands a deity all its own, which is why in 1931, Rutherford declared that all true followers of the Watchtower's doctrine would thereafter be known as Jehovah's Witnesses.
That separates us from all religion on the earth. And there's no other religion that wants that name anyhow. But we're delighted that we have it. And they regret, perhaps, a few that they didn't listen to it or adopt it.
In the years that followed, Jesus' role as king and mediator was de-emphasized. Jehovah's Witnesses stopped celebrating Christmas and birthdays, and the crown and cross symbol that appeared on every Watchtower cover for over 50 years was removed. When the Watchtower was initially published, it was called Zion's Watchtower and Herald of Christ's Presence, which was a nod to the Adventist belief that Jesus' presence, though invisible, had begun in 1874. In 1939, with both Russell and those disloyal Bible students in the rearview, Rutherford changed the title of their flagship publication to The Watchtower, announcing Jehovah's Kingdom. But it wasn't God's kingdom being promoted, it was Rutherford's religious media empire and the people he'd convinced to advertise for him, for free, in the hope of surviving Armageddon. Rutherford needed to keep Jesus' camouflage, but he replaced salvation through Jesus with salvation through the Watchtower, and by extension, through himself. From 1917 through 1942, Joseph Rutherford was the reigning king of Jehovah's kingdom, and Jehovah, like the great and powerful Oz featured on film in 1939, was Rutherford's intimidating but impotent puppet.
From the end of the World War forward, the true followers of Christ Jesus must give a wide testimony or witness to the truth, and that such witness work will be accomplished amidst persecution of the witnesses, and that at the end of the witness work, the greatest tribulation of all time will come upon the world. It is therefore very important for all of those who are of the great multitude that they now be diligent in studying the Scriptures and helps which God has provided for them, and to also be active in telling others about God and His kingdom. Faithfulness will be required of the great multitude because only the faithful God approves. During the past few years, more than 200 million books containing the good news of the kingdom have been placed in the hands of the people. Now the kingdom has come. Every Christian on earth must be a witness concerning the kingdom. Therefore, we are Jehovah's Witnesses. For your good, we request that you earnestly consider your privilege to now flee from religion
and to take your place wholly and immovably on the side of Jehovah is King Christ Jesus. If you favor this, say aye.